Hi, everyone, and welcome to Researcher's Desk. It is a real pleasure to have with us Anna Scaini from the Bolin Centre for Climate Research in the Department of Physical Geography at Stockholm University. Anna is going to be sharing her knowledge with us this afternoon about rivers. Anna, we're really appreciative that you're taking the time to be with us here at Researcher's Desk today. And I'm going to pass over the floor to you. Welcome.
Thank you. So I am going to share my screen and welcome everybody. And I'm going to full screen mode. There you go. I hope you see well. Thank you. Perfect. So thank you, everybody, for being here. It's a real pleasure for me. I'm actually part of Researcher's Desk since only a few months, and I'm really honored to be part of it. It's been on my to-do list for a while, and yeah, I finally made it. So it's really, I'm really happy to be here talking to you today. So I will talk about rivers, and I will talk about locals of the rivers. And so I'm a hydrologist by training, and I have been working on rivers for the last 13 years or so. And it's just recently that I sort of jumped on the other side and also tried to look into society and how society impacts the rivers and vice versa. So here I always like to start with the water cycle, and in particular with this water cycle that has been updated sort of by USGS only recently, where basically they USGS had to add human uses of water in order to sort of make the water cycle work out. So this is very striking and a very bold point, I think, and something that shows us how much humans play a central role in the new water cycle. This is how they call it, is the new water cycle. So this is very scary because in a way, you know, all changes to the water cycle so far are related to us, but it can also be seen as something positive, right? So it can be, we can see it as something like everything that happens from now on is up to us. So we can really influence how water circulates through the system and how we impact that. So with that in mind, our relation with rivers has been one of the most long-standing relationships ever. Most of the rivers of the world actually look like the right side of this lovely sketch from Water Europe. So they have been much or to some extent modified by us. And what the new paradigm of water management looks into is to try to sort of put nature back into its role of handling rivers and managing rivers. There are many challenges, of course, to do that, such as the conflicting values and interests, etc. So basically, we need a new paradigm and we need some changes. But why do we need some changes? Well, of course, here we are all here because we know about climate change and we know about loss of biodiversities and how they are connected, and our risks are also connected to the water cycle for a large part. But what I would like to stress today is that our approach with climate change so far has failed. And this is very strong, but I think we can all agree that we have been producing enough of research. For instance, here we see a lovely research piece that shows how much research has been done and how much we have produced knowledge with regard to climate change as such. But at the same time, the UN Global Assessment Report on Disaster Risk Reduction, the GAR, is one of the many reports where it is stressed that still a lot of people does not really know about climate change or does not believe that it is a threat. And I really like this opinion piece from The Guardian, which I might have actually learned from here, from one of your previous talks, where basically the point that this Guardian article makes is that we as people tend not to respond to certain data-driven or evidence-driven points that scientists make or that have been made so far. But basically what we will do is to fight for justice. So we will fight if somebody says that we have been wronged, and we have been wronged quite clearly. So this is just a context, but the idea that my research comes from is that there are some myths about the relationship between science and what decisions we make. Some are these, and in particular, I work on one of the alternative insights that can support effective science communication and have an impact, a real impact. And that is understanding the power of values, emotions, and experience in swaying minds. So the main point of my research and the main point of my talk today is that losing what we love makes us invested in change. Now, I apply this to rivers, but this can actually be a rather bigger approach. But since I am a hydrologist and this is what I do, I will show you what have been done so far on rivers. So I talk about values here, and it's very important that I tell you what values are and how I mean them. So for me, values are a sort of an umbrella term. And what river values, which is what I work on, are sort of comprised, is all these intangible values that are difficult to put a grasp on or put a value on, a real value like monetary, etc. So there are many ways to describe these river values. The ones that I use is mostly the cultural ecosystem services approach, but there are others, of course. And the way we measure how people feel or what people think of these river values is through perception. So there are also definitely a few ways to do that, but what I use is mostly questionnaires. I pair them sometimes with interviews and workshops, but mostly today I will talk about questionnaires. So now I would like to show you one example that I started with, and this is a river that I dreamt of working on since I began being an hydrologist, since I realized I was a scientist, basically. And this is the river where I grew up. So it's in northeastern Italy, an area that is very famous for being one of the most rainy places in Europe, certainly in the Mediterranean. But as you can see, this map shows the anomalies in soil moisture from, I think, the beginning, actually, of summer last year. So things went much worse. And basically, this year also, the recharge has not been enough. So basically, we see a clear trend that we have expected, and we have known this would happen. But of course, one thing is to know that it happens, and one thing is to do something about it. So this area has been particularly affected by things such as wildfires last year and many issues related to drought. So the values that I am talking about today are these. So as I said, the cultural ecosystem services, these are categories, and I have been developing and applying a questionnaire that includes questions to understand what people think of these, how people feel about these values. So these are heritage and symbolism, identity, contact with nature, recreation and tourism, conservation, and education and research. So I tailored some questions to sort of understand what people feel about that. And I did this on the Tagliamento River, so this river of my childhood, sort of. So I am a local of the river where I first began this study. So this that you see here is the Tagliamento River. And this is my favorite map so far, is the map of favorite places. So not only I asked to people their opinion about these cultural ecosystem services, but I tried to go a bit further, right? I tried to understand if there are proxies or if there are ways that people can tell me about the value that they place on rivers by simply putting a point on a map. So this is what people did. And this is a very successful questionnaire, I have to say, because in more than about a month, we collected more than 4,000 responses, which is quite a lot. Here, of course, we don't think of stakeholders, of knowledge users or categories in particular. So we want everybody to give their opinion if they want. And The striking thing of this map is that it shows that there is a hotspot, which is here, and that hotspot coincides with the planned flood mitigation. And this is a grey infrastructure, and in the next slide I will tell you what is the idea behind it. But basically, it tells us that any river intervention, or this was our main point, should account for its environmental impact, also in terms of loss of cultural services, because of course, doing something on that particular spot will affect so much more than economically and, you know, like landscape, etc. This is like a huge loss for a river like this, which, by the way, is one of the last free-flowing rivers in Central Europe. And I think the last one in the Alps. So the assumption is that favorite places, so the clicks, the amount of clicks, number of clicks, correspond to high river values. And it worked out quite nicely, despite being so simple. So the reason why they want to undertake this like a flood measure and do grey infrastructure on that spot is because that is in the pre-Alps. So there is a nice set of mountains that are low enough, and it looks like it's the best spot to do this type of infrastructures. But at the same time, of course, the risk, or the higher risk, is actually downstream, which is often the case. There is more people living here, and yeah, clearly people know that there is a risk in the lower part of the catchment. This is actually the response to another question that I asked, which was how dangerous is the river in terms of flooding, flood risk in the three parts, so the upper basin, middle basin, and lower basin. So a map like this is also useful. This is less novel in that, yeah, mapping of risks and risk perception is certainly something that is done quite a bit. But it shows that what people know about the risks is often also like related to what the newspapers tell you and what you know for different sources. Certainly, people didn't know that in the upper basin there are also some risks to floods, and they are maybe for lower return times, so they occur a bit more and they are a bit less dangerous. So people know more about the long-term danger in this case. So, of course, so this was the first river that I worked on, but now I'm also developing another study that is looks more into, basically every time we do a new study, we look into some more advanced question, right? So here I'm actually trying to look into the difference between what it was and what it is, or what it is becoming. So I'm interested in understanding how people feel about cultural ecosystem services loss, and in what way the way people relate to nature changes due to certain problems, such as droughts in this case, or the number of wildfires, etc. So at the moment we have this questionnaire that is open. Some questions are similar to the previous one, but it's quite more advanced, and now it's developed in-house. So we developed it on Python, and I'm very proud of that. I think it's really great, and it was needed. A tool that is like open source, open access, and can be used like that. So one of the things that I want to do is actually to develop this further and to make it available to everybody. But yeah, so the main points that we are dealing with now are the drought effects, or the impacts on the river and on people with regarding to how the climate has been changing. In particular, I look into changes of the last year. And that is because it's easier for people to remember and to sort of relate to what happened in the last year. And I do this on another river that is very close to where I'm from. And this is a transboundary river, beautiful. It's called the Emerald Beauty. It's really beautiful. It's also free-flowing mostly, and threatened by many, many directions. And yeah, the mapping questionnaire is available on rivervalues.eu. So these are two sort of examples and two spots that I started with. But this I started before getting a proper grant. So I was on a postdoc salary, and I was also doing other research. But now I'm really happy and really, almost relieved to say that I got a grant, and so I can develop this further. And so from the starting point of what I just told you, I'm going to develop different sites, and I'm going to work on different rivers around the world with the idea that I want to map these river values and try to understand if there is a simple way that we can use to sort of understand where people feel and why people feel attachment to the river, and in what way different communities give value to a river. So these are the preliminary rivers that I would like to work on. And at the moment, I am starting with, well, the Balkans. I actually changed from the Vjosa to the Neretva. I really want to work on the Neretva. And there are so many rivers that are amazing in the Balkans, so it's really tough to choose. But I think, I will have to make a decision soon. And then I am looking for collaborators also to develop studies that are meaningful and that can really assess properly impacts and problems that I am not so aware of in Sweden. So this is actually still under discussion what rivers I will be working on. And I have, of course, colleagues here at Stockholm University and elsewhere that are on board, and we are starting developing them, but it's always, I'm very, very happy, and I would love to have more involvement, especially from people from Sweden, because I know that being a local is really important here. But yeah, if you have questions about any of these case studies or other things related to the science, please go ahead either later or by email. Then another point that I always like to make is that, you need to work with locals and you need to work for locals as well. And I think in some way, the Balkans is an example where we have a lot of problems and a lot of things that we as scientists can produce and direct change towards. My hope is that, for instance, in the Balkans, I can make a stand for change, and I can help other scientists that work on the Balkans, such as the scientists for Balkan rivers, and I can sort of be part of a bigger project in this. It's also worth mentioning that a lot of what I do for in this line of research has grounds very far from here, and I think there is not better example than talking about New Zealand when we talk about rivers and values and how local communities can be involved into river management that looks into more nature and people, the people that really live there rather than interest, etc. And the nicest thing maybe to say about this is that there is a Maori say in the Maori story that goes like this. And basically they talk about flood risk, or they know about flood risk in a very interesting way. So they discuss and they say that the river is like a lizard, and the lizard is face towards the source of the river, whilst its tail is toward the estuary of the delta of the river. And that means that you do not want to put your house or to live next to the delta. And that is because the lizard will move its tail, and that is dangerous, so that you don't do that. Things like this are traditional knowledge and maybe not as data-based as we are used to in the physical science. But I think they are necessary and super important into involving people and making a mind swaying more of a thing. Yes, other projects that I'm involved on are more like outreach and communication, and I also work with students And we do sort of simplified questionnaires also for students to kind of understand and learn from them as much as we learn from adults and their opinions. That is very different, of course, but again, change begins with the education to social, cultural, and environmental values, so the same ones that I'm trying to understand. And they are difficult to quantify, but that is what I'm trying to do. And yes, so this is my last point, I would say. It is amazing to see how working with locals and working with perception and asking people what they think about their local river in this case can change you. For me, it was a spectacular discovery to design this first questionnaire, especially. This is from the Tagliamento questionnaire, because people were sort of looking forward to tell me their opinion. And of course, again, I'm a local of that river, so I guess that helps. But in general, I feel like it is amazing to see how generous, happy, and like engaged people become because you ask their opinions once. We now have endless occasions and opportunities to talk about science, to discuss the future of the river with locals, and to sort of move more engagement and sort of create, co-create or co-design, like a more fancy way to say this. But it's really something that, yeah, it is so far the best thing that occurred with my line of research. Yes, then of course, there is also a side of this, and that is that we have to bring our little drop to this new water cycle, and we have to try to make a difference if we want the difference to be made. Yeah, and I think maybe since I don't know how long I talked, actually I didn't take the time, but I wanted to finish on like if in case we have like a lack of ideas for discussion, I have these additional thoughts. And yeah, this is, I told you already a couple of things, but I think sometimes it's difficult to do this type of research where you do basically outreach is part of your research, and you are swaying completely from physical sciences to social sciences and back, etc. And I think it's not super easy to do. So I think, yeah, these are my takes on it so far. And it's very tough also to, the main problem that I see in the maps that I produce and that are very valuable scientifically is that I'm always scared that somebody is going to use the information that I gather in a non-scientific way. I think this is the most interesting point of discussion, perhaps, for me today. So yeah, I think I will stop here, and I'm looking forward to hear your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Anna, for a really, really exciting talk. This was a beautiful example of transdisciplinary research involving the communities with the research you're doing in a really spectacular way. And very happy you shared that with us at Researcher's Desk.